Well, hello everyone and welcome. This is Paul Ferrisi. I'm the chairman of Founders Group, and I'd like to spend about 20 minutes with you today explaining about 529 plans and more importantly sharing with you a lot of alternatives that are available to you that most people are totally unaware of. And so to start our program off right now, let's look at a little background. 529 plans were a section of the tax code that was established in June 2001. It was a way for people to set aside money after taxes that would grow tax-free and could be withdrawn tax-free if used for qualified educational expenses. Let's look at some details here. How are the custodians chosen for these programs? When a particular state decides to set up a 529 plan, many custodians, examples would be like Fidelity or Vanguard, would make an offer to them explaining what it is that they are offering to the state, the costs, etc., etc. Now, when the custodians send in their information, they know that they are dealing with state bureaucrats who are very conservative. So the custodians will send the most conservative of the funds that they have available. Well, what does this do for you? Well, it gives you some investment options for you become very limited. And why do they become limited? When a state finally decides on the custodian, let's say they choose Fidelity as an example, remember they have very conservative funds in front of them, so the state bureaucrats will always choose the most conservative of the conservative. Understand how a state bureaucrat thinks. They don't really care if a program makes any money. They just don't want to lose any money. Preservation of capital is their thinking. So we've got funds that are in place that are the most conservative of the conservative, which means the returns over a long period of time are really not going to be that strong. Look at transfers. As many of you may be aware of that have set up 529 plans, say your child does not either A, use all the monies that's in there, or maybe chooses to drop out partway going through school and there's some money still left in that account, you can take those funds that are there and either transfer them to maybe one of your other sibling accounts that may be in place there, or you could withdraw the money out, transfer the money out. Keep in mind, when you withdraw the money, say in a transfer of this nature there, the money, the basic capital has gone in there after taxes. So that original money coming back will not be taxed. You'll just be taxed on the gain. Let me give you a numbers example. You invested $20,000 into a fund that was for 529 use. It grew to $21,000. You decide the child's not going to use it for college or any other schooling. I'm going to pull all that money out. You would be taxed on the $1,000 gain that's in place, not on the $20,000 that's originally was put in there. Now, many people have seen their accounts pretty much lay flat or lose money over these years, so few of my clients have been able to pull out their monies, and what they've seen is that they don't owe any tax at all because they're actually in a loss position. We mentioned earlier about the performance. If you look at your own 529 plans and looking at most others, the performance has been poor at best. Number one, we've had a major market correction in the last few years. We had one back in 2001 to 2003. But more important, these are very conservative funds. So I'm finding most people are lucky if they've averaged a 2 to 3% rate of return. 529 plans, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but there are some strings attached with them. There are some annual contribution limits. You can only put a certain amount in each year. Limited investment choices, which we have spoken about. And here's the key element. There are restrictions on qualified educational expenses. Let me give you an example. I think this will explain it even to a better level. I have a client of mine, and she was a grandmother and wanted to set up 529 plans for her 8 grandchildren because her own children were not capable enough of funding these things. So she and her husband decided they were going to put $30,000 into each one of the 8 grandchildren's accounts. Now, You can put a lump sum amount up to a certain restriction amount, but nonetheless, just get the picture. There's $30,000 in the 529 account. Well, one of the children was about 16 years old, realized that the college that she wanted to go to, well, the 30,000 wasn't going to put a dent into it. So she was a very industrious young gal and wanted to work. Went to her grandmother and said, "Grammy, I need some money. I need to get just a beat up old car because I can do some babysitting to add money for my college funding, and I can work downtown at the local restaurant that's down there." Well, the grandmother did contact the custodian. The custodian said, no, getting a car for the child is not considered a qualified educational expense. So the poor child wanted to work, earn money to be able to support the college education, but it was thwarted with the 529 plan. I want you to keep this in mind because one of the alternatives I'm going to show you, it doesn't matter when you withdraw the money, whether it's for educational expenses or non-educational expenses. Here's our example. This is a very traditional 529 plan. Mary and Bill Jones opened a 529 plan for their daughter, Sue. Well, they invested over a few-year period of time a total of $10,000. It gained a little, then it dropped when the market corrected, and today it's back up to about $12,000. So they've made about a $2,000 gain. That's a gain of 20% over the 7-year period, so they've averaged the traditional about 3% per year. Sue is 12 years old right now, and we have $12,000 in the account, and she's going to start college in 6 years at age 18. We are going to assume that mom and dad do not put any new additions into the 529 plan, and we're going to assume a 5% rate of return for the next 6 years before Sue starts college. Her account should be worth a little over $16,000 as she enters college. Now let's assume, for simplicity here, that during her college years there's absolutely no rate of return on the money in the 529, just for simplicity here. So Sue will be able to withdraw $4,000 out each year for the 4 years, pretty much clean the account out, and it will be empty upon her graduation. Well, this is classically what happens with a 529 plan and how people use it. Well, let's look at some of the pros of a 529 plan. As we've mentioned before, the money grows tax-free. It can be withdrawn tax-free if used for qualified expenses, and it's not counted against gifting if it's held within the limits. So mom and dad may want to gift some of the monies to a child. What are some of the negatives or the cons? The investment choices are subject to the state's decisions, which are very conservative. The monies are subject to the volatility in the market, and there are severe restrictions as to the definition of qualified educational expenses. Lastly, there are limitations on how much can be invested either in a lump sum or on an annual basis. Well, let's look at an alternative to the traditional 529 plan. Mary and Bill, again, contribute the same $10,000 if they've done before. This time, they're going to put it into a conservative mutual fund in which mom and dad are the owners. Now, Sue is a minor, so cannot own it, so mom and dad are the owner. This mutual fund will be subject to the same volatility that happens in a 529 plan. Volatility in the market is what I mean. Now, some issues. Mary and Bill may have to pay taxes annually on any interest or dividends earned each year in this mutual fund. And number two, when they withdraw the money to fund the schooling for Sue, they may owe capital gains taxes on it. Well, what are the pros of this approach? Well, they can put unlimited amounts in after tax into this program. There are no restrictions on what the funds can be used for. They can be used for educational, non-educational, can be used to buy her a vehicle, whatever the case may be. And number three, they can control and decide how the money will be used for Sue's educational needs. The cons of this, it's subject to the volatility of the market, subject to a variety of taxes. It's subject to annual administrative fees of 1 to 3% or loads of 4%. Keep in mind, 529 plans also have these administrative fees and the loads. And lastly, the program alternative ends upon the withdrawal of all the funds. That is, once all the monies are withdrawn out of the program for, let's say, Sue's education, the account is empty. Let's look at a second alternative. Mary and Bill this time decide to place the same $10,000 into the same mutual fund, but this time it's a custodial account for Sue. Again, Sue is a minor, cannot own anything, so Mom and Dad have set up a custodial account for them. The pros of this, again, they can put unlimited amounts in after tax into the program, and there will be no restriction on what the funds can be used for. What are the cons? Well, they're subject to the volatility of the market, subject to the variety of taxes that will come to them, subject to the annual administrative fees of 1 to 3% or possible loads of up to 4%. And here's the killer. Once the child reaches the majority, the monies in the account become Sue's, and she can take the money out and use it any way she wants. The example I want to use that I read about was that a husband and wife had set aside in a custodial account like this in excess of $100,000. It actually had built up to $100,000 for their son. Now, in the state in which they lived in, the age of majority was 18. On the son's birthday in the morning, Mom and Dad were looking around for the son. They could not see him. They couldn't find him. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the back door opened, in walked the son with this man. They said, "Who is this strange man?" He said, "This is my attorney. Effective right now, I am 18 years old. That $100,000 plus in the custodial account is mine. Mom and Dad, you got 24 hours to get that money and send it to my attorney, or we'll commence a lawsuit. Because I've got plans in 3 or 4 days. Crystal and I are going to Europe, and we're going to backpack for 2 years and use all that money." And there's absolutely nothing Mom and Dad can do about that. The last con on this, the negative, is the program alternative again ends upon the withdrawal of all the funds. Well, let's look at our next alternative to the 529 plans, the one that I wanted to share with you today, and we'll call it MFTA 101A. Where does this name come from that we've made up here? It comes from Section 101A of the Internal Revenue Code, and this section of the code was established in 1913 at the inception of the Federal Income Tax Code. Let's talk about some of the pros with this program. You can put an unlimited amount, can be invested after tax without any restrictions whatsoever. The money grows tax-free, same as the 529 plan, and can be withdrawn tax-free for any reason whatsoever. It can be for educational, non-educational, which is unlike the 529. As I mentioned, the monies can be used for educational needs or non-educational needs. The administration fees are no more than 1%, and the program can continue after graduation and produce a huge retirement fund for Sue during her retirement years. Number 6, it's not subject to any taxation or the volatility in the markets. And number 7, it does require a tiny amount of life insurance on Sue in order to provide for all these tax-free benefits. The money grows tax-free, you can take it out anytime you want tax-free, and when you die it blossoms and transfers tax-free. What's the cons on this? Well, it requires a minimum of 5-year funding period versus a lump sum. So we've got to do this funding over a 5-year period. Well, let's take a look at some of the results and compare them with the 529 and the other alternatives I've shared with you. If you remember in our original example, Mom and Dad had put money aside, it had grown a little bit after dropping, and we assumed about a 5% rate of return. So when Sue was ready, it was about $16,000 we had available. Well, I've changed the numbers just ever so slightly, and instead of $16,000, I said over the 5-year period of time, Mom and Dad are going to contribute $3,000 per year. It's a total of $15,000. It's a little bit off from the $16,000 that we mentioned earlier into this MFTA 101A program. As I mentioned earlier, there is a tiny amount of life insurance that must come along for the ride to get all of these benefits. And the minimum death benefit that you will see for Sue is $324,000. Please follow my cursor here, and you will notice I moved it 1 year later just to round off here. When Sue is 19 years old, she chooses to enter college. and will withdraw $4,000 per year tax-free to go towards her college education, identical to the 529 plan. By doing it in this manner, there is a tiny bit of monies still left into the account, and we don't want to let this thing die. So in our example, when Sue finishes college, and I've chosen at the end of 22 years old, at age 23, Mom and Dad gift the program to her, if she's been a good gal, gift the program to her and tell her, lock this thing away in a safety deposit box. Do not touch it. Don't touch it at all. And in my assumption, I assume Sue's a very young child right now, that by the time she's ready to retire, it's probably going to be closer to age 70 when people retire, she can begin withdrawing tax-free from her account $84,000 tax-free that will assist towards her retirement. And in so doing, as you've seen, I've skipped some spaces here, the insurance companies presently have, as of today, a mortality level of 120 years old. No. Not everybody's going to live to 120 years old, but life expectancy has exploded with the breakthroughs in medicine. So I've gone out to the maximum here, and as you can see, she can withdraw $84,000 each year to age 120. Actually, if she lives longer than that, this thing will continue ad infinitum. But I've stopped it at age 84. What's taken place here? Mom and Dad had originally invested $15,000 on her behalf before she went to college, including the money she took out for college, plus all of these years of $84,000. She will have been able to withdraw tax-free $4.2 million. And because she's locked it away and not touched it, if we look to the far right, the death benefit has grown to over $19 million. So if Sue lives to age 120 and dies, she can pass on to her children, her grandchildren, and her heirs $19 million tax-free. Well, let's take a look at a second alternative within this program. In this particular case, if you'll notice, everything is identical at the beginning. Mom and Dad place $3,000 a year into the program. She has the minimum death benefit of $324. She takes out the $4,000 each and every year to fund her schooling. And then she's going to take maybe a year off after she finishes school, go to Europe, whatever have you. Mom and Dad then gift the policy to her, and when she returns, they start screaming and say, go out and get a job. If Mom and Dad have been good parents in teaching fiscal responsibility, they should try to encourage her to contribute $250 a month, the same $3,000 a year, into her program for as long as she works. And I'm assuming she will work to age 69. In so doing, my friends, you can see the dramatic change. Retiring at age 70, no longer is it $84,000. She can withdraw $230,000 tax-free, and again, I allowed this to go out to the maximum to age 120. In this particular case, between the folks putting in $15,000 and Sue over her working career putting in $135,000, there's a grand total of $150,000 that has gone in. And she, over these time periods of age 70 to 120, the 50 years, plus the college monies, will have been able to withdraw over $11 million. And if she dies at age 120, she will be able to pass on to her heirs over $41 million in tax-free benefits upon her death to her heirs. Now, some of you may be looking at this and questioning, well, what happens if she puts in more? What happens if she puts in less? I think you get the idea. It's going to be pro rata. If you doubled the amount that was contributed into the program, let's say $6,000 and $3,000, you can pretty much assure that it'll be near double the amount that you will pull out here. And same thing if you took half of it. Well, this is my quick approach to explaining some alternatives to 529s. I'd like you to really consider the MFTA as a far superior alternative to 529s. If you'd like to visit with us, you want to learn more information about us, you can contact us by calling us at 713 871-5919. Visit our website at www.founders-group.net. We'd be glad to set up an appointment to visit with you and answer any questions you have. Thank you very, very much.